So I'd like to welcome you to this discussion on translations of the Arabian Nights. It's surprising how recently the Arabian Nights are being translated from Arabic as opposed to from Galan's French into many languages such as Danish and Dutch and Norwegian for the first time. And it's a great pleasure to introduce the translators here gathered. In the spirit of today, we will just introduce people very briefly in terms of when their translations are coming out or have come out. Ellen Wolf's translation came out in October of 2003. There were
13.
2013. There were 5 volumes based on the Bulak and the Mahdi from Arabic, and there was also a 6th volume from the French. And the translator of that, Kim Withoff, is also here. And I hope he feels encouraged to join in as much as anybody else in the discussion. Ahmund Bjorknes is has no date of publication yet because the translation
is I recently started it, so this is a project unraveling.
We're looking forward into his translation to Norwegian, and he plans to translate the Mahdi text, but also with reference to the original Galland manuscript.
Because now the manuscript is readily available, it's been digitized by the Bibliothèque Nationale, and the resolution is amazing. So the quality of the image is very good. So I'm using it not always systematically, but I'm using it as a reference to.
Why not?
Yes, I mean it's also enjoyable, not only.
Speaking of the Mahdi, Claudia Ott did use the Mahdi for her 2004 translation. Very mysteriously, she said, so far, her translation of the Fazl Night so far has 1 volume. I will leave it at that. She did use the Mahdi edition of the Galland manuscript at the Bibliothèque Nationale. And Richard Levin translated from 1991 to 1999. That amount of time would indicate to me he probably did it himself, as opposed to paying, in 14 volumes from the Mahdi and the Bulak edition once again. And Richard also added a separate volume with the Ali Baba and Aladdin from French. So that gives you a sense of who's here, translating into what languages and from which texts. So I think without further ado, I would like to ask you what your primary motivation was in choosing to translate the Arabian Nights.
Well, I was hired. Headhunted and hired. They needed one to do the job. And, I said, of course, yes. I have no really. I've never researched in nights, Arabian Nights. My specialty is usually old classical poetry and Quran. I've translated the Quran. And then in the late 10 years, I've started on modern literature. And then suddenly came this very fine thing, if I wanted to translate the Nights. Yes.
How could you refuse?
Never.
And okay. And you give 2013 as the publication date. And how many years did it take to?
They gave me 2 years. And then I said 10. And then we agreed on 3.5.
And I think you were telling me that over breakfast, this was 3.5 years of 14 hours a day.
Sure.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to share their completely non-monetary motivations?
Well, I proposed it myself, so I mean I was not hired in that sense. But I think, to be honest, and one should after hearing all these stories of fraudulent tricks in the history of the Nights, and it was perhaps basically motivated by this project as a PR gimmick to make my voice known in the Norwegian public in order to translate real things afterwards. That was my thought. I have to be honest and admit that. And by real things, I mean classical, older things, classical Arabic literature. And this was perhaps it was a delusion that I think I share with many people, that the nights are not as wonderful and as interesting as I now know that they are. So I quickly realized that I had made a very good choice in my stunt, which turned out not to be so easy as a stunt, because it takes time to translate and to prepare for translation, and one needs funding. And I got preliminary funding for a very short period from the publisher. And I am a scholar, I do research, I'm writing my PhD dissertation, I'm doing all kinds of other projects. So this is, I mean, like for Galant, it's for me a pastime project. And I'm not sure whether that is a good idea. It is pleasant when I'm working on it, but it really takes much more. I mean, if you have 14 hours a day, I may have maximum 4 if I am just relinquishing all other, hobby activities, and after work publishing, translating 4 hours every night. So you could do the maths. I mean, but of course I am concentrating only on parts of the text, which is the first 282 nights of the Mahdi Galant manuscript. So perhaps during next year I will know if I'm not sure that I will be able to produce a text for next fall, but the year after that is possible. So if next fall, I would need serious work on it, intense periods.
Without other things taking precedence.
Yeah, I have to leave all of my other projects.
Galant makes it sound so. In his diary, annotated so copiously by Frédéric Baudin and Richard Waller, he'll discuss his events of the day. I went to the Académie. I heard this lecture, and only in the evening did he translate.
Yes.
So it's astonishing.
Well, sometimes it works. I mean, also you adapt your style of translate. I mean, the text is repetitive in many ways. There are techniques to translate, to do this efficiently. It's possible, but it's hard work.
So we have a high threshold for honesty now, so far, in terms of motivation for translation. Claudia, you're speaking of marketing. This is the 101 Nights, but your 1001 Nights you also showed me is also beautifully bound and decoratively calligraphed, or the font is a work of beauty in and of itself. What was your motivation in turning to translate the 1001 Nights?
The motivation for the publisher was the 300 years anniversary of the publication of Galant's Mille et une Nuits. This was, and it was, I think it was the initiative of Ulrich Barzolf, who also was the one who proposed my name to the publisher, which really I cannot thank him enough for this initiative, because it changed all my life. And then also for me, I was a quite young researcher. I had finished my doctoral dissertation about the manuscripts of Arabian epics, and also a bit of field work about storytelling techniques, or reading from manuscripts. So public readings was my major subject, but out of manuscripts, and then I very, very much came into the study of the manuscripts of Arabian epics, because I discovered that most of the Arabian epics just didn't, or very, very many of them didn't even have been printed. So I read more than 3,000 numbers of manuscripts before after 6 years of hard work, I put out this dissertation. And then it took me another 4 years to make the translation of the Mahdi edition, and not in the evening, but in the morning. I think I'm a quite slow worker, okay? But it was a very pleasant time. And for me, it was really a new challenge, because then I found out that I'm writer. Yeah, I didn't know that before. I thought I would be a researcher or a professor or something like that.
So the translation made you into a writer.
Yeah. That's what happened. I think it happened because it took me so much time. I would not be ready to deliver anything except after a process of really trying to make literature out of it, and so I could start to discover that it's a process of really writing something new. But for me, the thing I'm most proud of is this one. It's not the book. The book is very beautiful, but as you see, the binding is not what I'd. After more than 300 readings, but the most important thing for me, except of the translation, is this one. Not this beauty. This is a very beautiful caricature, but this from here to the end is more than 60 pages Nachwort. Yeah, this is academic Nachwort. Here I've even more. I've quite approximately a quarter of it is the academic Nachwort, and I'm so happy that quite a few of the readers even read the Nachwort, and I put all the informations I got and all the research I did, I put into the Nachworts, and just I didn't accept any page limitation for the Nachwort. I said to my publisher, no, I am an academic also. I'm not only a writer. I will not accept any page limitation for the Nachwort, and I'm very proud that they let me do these very, very big Nachworts, and that's why I was not suffering of a lack of academic publishing, because I could do it in my Nachworts. Nachwörter.
And this is a very interesting topic. We may want.
Yes,
to talk
I
about
think
that.
we'll follow up on it. Richard, before we come back to the question of the commentary and the apparatus, your honest motivation.
Yes, well, I can be brief, because I was translating modern literature, Arabic literature especially, and there was no translation from the Arabic of the 1001 Nights from Arabic into Dutch. So I just thought, why not do something really big? So I went to several big publishers who started laughing and said, well, this is impossible. We cannot finance this. This is ridiculous. And then I went to a very small publisher, and he said, well, why not just start with volume 1 and see what happens? And volume 1 was a big success. So we went on and on and on. And when you start translating 1001 Nights, as you should, at a certain point you get addicted. So you have to continue. There's no choice. So you continue, and when it's finished, you can't believe it, and you still think that it will continue some time, which I still believe. And well, we'll see.
Richard, the name of your publisher is also prophetic, isn't it?
Boulac.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, that was perhaps a good idea to approach him.
So the market has come up, and everybody's answer so far, it reminds me of what happened recently in Brazil, when the first translation from Arabic into Portuguese was done. Because until then, it was the same thing as Robert had indicated. It was the sort of Francophilia and Paris that motivated all these translations from Galan before into Portuguese. But it was an incredible success. Mm-hmm. The Global, which is the main TV station, which has a press, published this in an astonishing amount of market penetration. So I guess that's the question of, did you find an audience? I know that Ellen won multiple awards. I'm just curious, and I believe I was promised an answer as to this question of audience. What is the market for these translations of the Arabian Nights?
I don't know.
And that's the 10-kilo thing right there, the object. You could show it to us.
Yeah, you could show all of them. Please put them besides. It's so
It's
beautiful.
too heavy, you know. You can't carry
But
it
it's
home
really
from the
beautiful.
book.
Let's and please tell that this is the publisher. Here's his publisher.
Oh, in addition to translating from French.
Yeah,
Yes,
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 he
The
is the
5 is
publisher.
from Arabic, and the number 6 is from French.
I see.
Yes, we
and
had
he's the
lines up,
publisher
but I
of the-
So we have the
forgot
publisher breaking open the
Yeah, that's
the
a great moment.
10-kilo box.
You have to film him making
Pure gold.
showing
Don't
us
forget
this
that.
case. Yes. Oh.
As we marvel at this, does anybody have comments to make on
Yes,
market?
I was thinking about that just now. That I am really wondering about the market, and I'm very anxious to see how the translation will be received in Norway, for example, because
That's great. Huh?
it is perceived now. It is perceived.
Thank you.
Oh,
the perception.
the perception, I think, the most widespread perception about the 1001 Nights in Norway, and I think this is not unique to Norway, is that it is children's literature. And this is, I have been, I did not think that, and maybe because of my background in Arabic studies, but I have been so surprised by this. It's extremely widespread, from academics to anyone you care to mention, tend to have this idea, and that why would you translate children's literature, and so on. So I hope that, and it was a little bit perhaps exaggerating when I said that I chose to translate the Nights in order to make a name for myself, because I really had this very I have I've been wanting to promote Arabic literature, and I thought that and there's much else rather than the Nights that I would like to promote, but I thought that using the Nights as a spearhead, because of its popularity, it could open the door for Arabic literature and open up for new audiences. And I think exactly breaking that perception that it is fairy tales for children and therefore not real interesting literature, maybe if that is the marketing does that in a good way, and it is successful, because they are wonderful. It's a wonderful literary world that has now been well studied, and it's a hugely interesting world to go into. And if people just get that, I think the market is huge. So it's really about opening that market.
But the other side of the reputation of the 1001 Nights is that it's an erotic masterpiece of world literature. So
Yeah.
Maybe you should start to spread this image of the 1001 Nights first, because this was in the reviews after the translation appeared. This was the main thing.
Yes.
In the newspapers. It's a masterpiece of erotic literature translated into Dutch. This is, and the first volume was sold out in one weekend. So it was sold out even before the bills of the printer had arrived at the publisher. So. Yeah, you should perhaps speculate on something different.
Or I could include, perhaps many of you, that erotic, or frankly, pornographic literature abounds in classical Arabic. There's huge pornographic literature, shocking and sometimes funny, but very explicit. Mm-hmm. And of course, I could continue I could put in some of those stories there into the Nights, maybe to expand 282 to 1001 just by pure erotism. Yes, that's possible.
Burton did something like that, going from Nights to Kama Sutra to the scented garden, and let's revise that as the perfume garden, So it was a successful marketing strategy.
In a way, it seems that this is what one is supposed to do when one translates the Nights.
Which reminds me of Claudia's question: where is the role of the commentary, the apparatus, the scholarship?
Yes.
I know that with the even with very scholarly ventures like the Library of Arabic Literature, now published by NYU Press, the editors were told, put the apparatus online. You have these beautiful bilingual editions. Where is the text? Where's the apparatus? Well, that's you can Google it, or you can follow the link that we will give you. So where, you know, so maybe there's an appeal, a commercial appeal, and how do you find space? Were you able to find space like Claudia for something other than the text?
Well, uh, during my translation, I collected all kinds of material, books, visual material, film, everything I could find. And in the end, the publisher agreed to add, together with the last volume of the translation, a separate book in the form of an encyclopedia. It's called The World of Shahrazad. And this contained everything I collected in the course of time and everything I imagined, and I put in, because it's an encyclopedia, you can put in everything if it only matches the entry. So, so I really, everything that came on my way during the translation was included in this book, which turned into a kind of universe of narration. And included my own experiences, of course.
Is this published in Dutch only or in English also?
It's in Dutch. Of course, afterwards, Martzolf and me, we published the Arabian Nights Encyclopedia, and I must confess that a lot of material has been included in the larger encyclopedia.
From the World of Shahrazad.
Yeah. I left out a funny bit and put in more academic, boring stuff. But
You shouldn't be so sure that so-called academic stuff is boring to a wide readership. I think
that's right.
more people than we know, and especially more people than publishers think, really are very smart people and read technical texts with interest. And I have ended up doing too much research while translating and while reading the Mahdi text. And I think, was it you, Robert, that in the Lyons translation talks about making one of the introductions to volume 2 maybe, making the translation of the Nights an excuse for learned footnotes. And this is a temptation that I also have. And I remember one of them includes a reference to the Akkadian word for temple prostitute, which is harimtu, obviously related to what is really the background in the Middle East of the harim. And I realized this is going too far. It's interesting, but this is not its place. So it really gives you that. I mean, it is an encyclopedia in that sense, of many concepts, of historical references, of words, and it can be used to a lots of things. So the point, I guess, is simply to find a limit for that, rather than expanding it. I mean, we have Burton as an extreme case of what you should not do, and but it would be a pity because while translating, you are also doing research, and it's a pity if you do not do something with that that knowledge that you acquire and have to acquire while reading, because even though it is a text that is not very difficult, it needs research to be properly understood.
But how many decades will you use?
Well, it's a question of limitation then, maybe. I mean,
Very much,
I would,
think,
yeah.
because
yeah.
then it is a Mahdi.
Yes, I would rather do something like that than
because if not,
complete,
it's a lifetime.
Yes.
which is not bad. I mean,
No.
A lifetime is a
Somebody
good.
pay you.
in itself, you could spend a lifetime.
So,
No, it's nice job to do in lifetime, sure.
so you already brought up one of the questions which I think all the participants wanted to bring up in some way, is when playing into Orientalism or fighting it by translating the Arabian Nights. You know, are you making space for other texts or not? And the Brazilian case that I gave, Mamed Jahush, the translator of the Arabian Nights, capitalized upon the success and was able to translate other works into Portuguese because of the commercial success of the Nights. For example, the 101 Nights was translated much earlier than it's being translated now into English, for example. So it can happen. It did happen in Brazil, but has that been the experience in Dutch, German, or Danish? did you find that now you can propose other things and people will take you up on it, or is this a rather idealistic understanding of how the market will play out?
Well, this very small publisher who started on this venture was able more or less to survive on the basis of the income of the revenues of the 1001 Nights. So it was a very
You
important.
needed to sign a better contract.
Yeah, and it has been republished many times in different forms. So different kinds of editions, paperback and more anthology. So they really used it to make as much money as possible.
Does that mean they will now translate other works from Arabic?
Well, it's the publisher is called Bulak, and it's specialized in Middle East, and not really translation, but and it really has helped. But on the other hand, it's not really speculating on this image, because the translation, of course, the work itself is not really an erotic work, so people will be disappointed after a while. So they will buy the first volume and maybe the second, and then they will stop.
But then there is a solution to that. Then you translate Jawami' al-Lidda, or one of the works in that genre, which is extremely erotic.
Yeah, but yeah.
I think one of the problems.
Have you checked that against sales figures? I mean, you're speculating now, but your publisher
Yes,
will tell you, right?
yeah. He told me that I think the first volumes were selling quite well, and then from the fifth it was less, and we got subsidy because we had already proven that it was a serious translation. So we got money from other places. We could complete the whole series and re-edit it in other forms. So in the end, it was made possible only by the strategy of the publisher, just beginning on a one-by-one basis, start with the first volume and try to sell it, and then we see how to continue. And this was, in fact, the right strategy.
Claudia?
I think there's something very mystical about the title of our favorite work, 1001 Nights, because this title has become so well known that anything which is connected with this title will sell. That's what the publishers always told me. Also, even I've experienced myself. There's a big contrast in number of sold copies of the 1001 Nights and the 101 Nights, because people they know the 1001 Nights and they don't know the 101 Nights. They ask, is there a zero missing? Yeah. Oh no. So no, I take the bigger one, the 1001 Nights. Something. I don't know if they really...
Is that why you made this one so big?
Bigger.
To try and...
Actually, I didn't do it. I can tell you that when I was in the very comfortable situation to choose a publisher for this 101 Nights project, it was Manesse. This is the Verlag, is called Manesse, who made me the best offer. But I was expecting them to make a very small volume out of it, because they have something called Bibliothek der Weltliteratur, and I'm one
They're
of
all
the
small. Right?
I'm one of these old-fashioned readers who have a bookshelf full of Manesse books, these small ones, and I thought, I will become one of these. My book will become one of these small. Even when the publisher of Manesse came to visit me in my home office at my house to just check out if I'm a serious translator, or I went to an, but you should not tell this to anybody, but we sind ja in Familie. I went to a friend who is an antiquar, who sells old book, and I asked him how many Manesse volumes do you have in your antiquariat? He said 400. I said, give me 20 of them for today. He gave me 20, and I made a second bookshelf just 10 minutes before the Manesse Verleger came to my house. And that's and then after
now you know.
after I prepared very beautifully my bookshelf Manesse with these small volumes, then the Manesse Verleger came and said, we will make a big volume out of it. I said, okay, do what you want. You are free, but they they promised me to have it in this small form also as in the future, inshallah. So when they wanted to just create a new market of for this book, and just also I think they wanted to make an experiment for themselves, and perhaps in 2 or 3 years they will make this small volume out of it, which this is Mernesse Bibliothek der Weltliteratur, and it should be part of this. But also in answer to your question to your last question, yes, I have been asked many times, where are the pictures? Or where are the beautiful women? Why
think
aren't
they're in
they?
here, no? The 101 nights from
There's
it.
no beautiful. There's no pictures. There's no Alibaba. There's no Aladdin. So, in fact, many readers are disappointed.
I wanted to ask about that, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. So there's and it's this disappointment that the Nachworts try to just compete with, and to say, okay, we don't have here Alibaba, we don't have a single beautiful woman, not as a picture, but I will explain you why. And then I found out that really it's the same experience you made, Amund, that very many people really read the Nachworts, and they are very interested in the academic fundament of this translation. And out of the really more than 300 or 400 readings I had with these two books, at least 200 is with an academic lecture in it. I make a short lecture of 15 minutes with PowerPoint and so on, and I have had so great publics for this academic stuff. It's really very, very good experience. So
I have to ask about the Alibaba, because obviously we all know the experience of Hussein Hadawi out in the deserts of Nevada, right? Writing his preface to the first, was supposed to be the only volume. Remember that, where he says, remove the grime that has accumulated, like an art restorer, and scope out that grime.
Yeah.
And then what happened? He was forced to eat his words and produce a second volume. His publisher basically forced him to produce a second volume.
What is meant by forced?
Well, he
Just
he was very adamant that as a matter of principle, he was only going to include the 282 stories as edited by Mahdi, which meant even not including Kamal al-Zaman, because there were only 20 pages in the Galan manuscript of the beginning. And then not only did they produce a second volume, which was the Sinbad and the Popular Tales, but really it was the Orphan Tales from French.
Yeah.
But now, if you buy it, it's combined. You can't even buy the first edition separately. So it always now comes with the second volume of stories that he had insisted he would never include over his dead body.
Maybe I should stop before it's too late.
So I'm
Maybe
curious,
forced
the sixth volume with the Orphan Tales, or in your case as well, Rishad, we have the publishers present. We have also Erwin, who could tell us why we have Orphan Tales in the Lyons translation. How did that happen? Was that part of your original plan to translate the...
I had no plans, absolutely. I was hired.
So this was a market...
Yes, well, the publisher...
Where's the publisher?
Here
Oh, here we are.
Why we included the sixth volume?
Yes.
Yeah, well, you can see that if we hadn't included
Super Antwort.
it,
Very good.
but there was a problem actually with the sixth volume, because if you try to lift it, you'll see that it's sort of very lighter than the others compared to the thickness of it. And to have this calligraphy on the back looking right, we had to make the sixth volume printed on paper twice as thick as the others. So there's a trick to it. But that doesn't really.
We're learning all sorts of tricks. You know, when you invite a publisher to your house, make sure you have like Oxford UP behind you. Subliminally, Oxford will publish your book as well.
This is
Claudia found this calligrapher for us.
And
So we had to be serious about that. Why we included the sixth volume? Simply because it belongs to what is publicly understood by the Arabian Nights, and it contains some of the most beloved stories. But when you read them, of course, they are very different. The language of them is very different, and the whole style is an 18th century fairy tale European style.
Yeah, I think Ursula Lyons adds a note on how different it is, almost as if to warn the reader of the sort of the pacing and the psychology is very different.
It's
Rob-
lighter in any way.
Robert, was it a similar rationale? And
It is identical. We just made very clear that these are not, that they have the status of these stories is controversial. And there's a step at the back of each volume, 2 stories in each, or 2 orphan stories at the back of each volume, if I remember right.
Richard?
Well, at a certain point, the publisher had the opportunity to make a small book. He needed a small text for a book, for a present or something. And so he asked me if the story of Aladdin wouldn't be a good idea. So I translated it from the Arabic and not from... There's an Arabic edition by Zotenberg, published in the end of the 19th century. So I said, well, I'll stick to my trade and not translate it from the French, but from this Arabic edition. And Alibaba the same. It's just a small booklet containing only this story and a foreword, preface, not. And I also translated it from a manuscript in the Bodleian library and not from the French.
So this sounds a bit like Burton saying he would only translate the orphan tales from Arabic, you know.
Yeah.
Though perhaps it's good to bring up Burton because there are issues relating to those Arabic texts in terms of authenticity that one should bear in mind. But I think I would like to ask a broader question about your strategies as translators. Lawrence Venuti, who popularized Schleiermacher's terms, you know, domesticating and foreignizing, himself regrets the binary that he seems to have contaminated the discussion about translation with. But it is a useful shorthand. Were you trying to bring the quality of Arabic and disrupt the fluency of English? Or were you trying to produce a text as if it flowed and as if it had been composed in English? Were you foreignizing or domesticating if we submit to the binary terms?
Certainly domesticating. I mean, it's a Danish public who's going to read it, and it must be fluent in Danish, in my native language.
So 6 prizes later, maybe that's a good argument for domesticating your translation.
And I think I agree, but I have a slightly different version of that. What I follow as a strategy, which is kind of similar to what I've seen of Ellen's translation, is to domesticate in the syntax, but to foreignize in the vocabulary. Yeah. So that I like to use the occasion to comment on cultural concepts and words, although I have not been able to be consistent. When I do, but I have noticed that when I do domesticate these concepts, I am forced to write a learned, erudite footnote. So
it's a trade-off.
For me, that is a real dilemma. I mean, if you go too far, I mean, let's take the example of there are some parallels to stories in the nights in European folklore where there's a camel in the Arabic version and an ox in the European version. One wouldn't want to go that far, you know. But how far does one want to go? And it is not an easily answered question, I think.
I don't think it is foreignizing to call an ifrit and an ifrit. I mean, nobody knows, no ordinary Danes know what an ifrit is. But the Dane will very quickly learn to know. There's a fine description in one of the first pages.
Yes.
And anyway, I have a small word explanation.
We know.
Yes.
Yes, I want to show you. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Here, the most common words.
Wow.
Well,
In
yeah.
bookmark form, that's actually.
And on the other side, the meters.
Claudia and Richard, in your translation strategies, were you consciously balancing the dictates of making things familiar or foreign?
So for myself, it's perhaps it's a bit more complicated because, as I told you at the beginning, I've been working very slowly, and so I had a lot of time. I just took for myself this time, and so for me, one of the, I don't know, how do you say in English, Durchgang? So if I have many, wie sagt man das? One of the turns I gave the translation was a musical one. So because I'm also
As we know.
musician, so for example, I tried to translate the poetry into together with the Arabic meter, and just to let it sound Arabic. So the poetry, for example, you could call it foreignizing, but I don't feel that it's like that. I just try to let it sound German and Arabic at the same time. In the beginning of, so I think in a quarter of an hour at at 5:30 when the readings will start, we will give you one example of that, because we then will play a piece at the end of which we present one of the poems in the Tawil meter in Arabic and German, and then you can just experience how it sounds. So this is one of the terms I give the translation. I just wanted, but there is a question that I had for you, Paolo, and I think this is perhaps the right moment for this question. In your really fascinating paper, very interesting paper, you had a quotation out of the story of the hunchback. And I was all the time wondering what was wrong with this sentence. It is, according to my memory, it's exactly the wording of the Mahdi edition. This sentence that you quoted, when she gave I even can look it up here in the German translation, and I didn't look up nor Payne nor Burton at this place, but I'm wondering what was wrong about this sentence. What was the problem with this sentence? I just don't remember.
Well,
Right,
I didn't mean to
correctly.
suggest that there was anything wrong with it. Burton, of course, was famous for priding himself on being the only English translator, and this is still the case after Lyons and Khadawi, to have preserved the saj, the rhyming prose. So the fact that he included gobo to go with gobbet and gullet and alliteration,
Okay,
Yes.
so
I see.
he was going very far to replicate that.
But the problem is there's no rhyme prose there.
That is the.
And that is
Yeah.
wrong.
But that was my
This-
whole point, that he wasn't
Yes, I
following it where it was in
understand
Arabic.
Yes.
He took a text in English, and where
Okay.
he wanted to, he added
Yeah.
rhyming
Yes,
prose.
because they come to
Yeah.
him.
Okay, that's right. There's no
there's
rhyming
no
prose in
rhyme prose
Arabic
there.
at
And
this
then-
place. It's normal,
quite sure.
very normal passage.
And
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
Robert
Yeah.
could maybe remind us, but in The Companion, he reminds us that there is rhyming prose, but often to accentuate heroism and battles and certain things. And
Yes.
Burton had a different sensibility. He was a very comical, satiric writer. So
Yes.
he often uses it more for
Yes.
humor, and not necessarily always at the service even of the same
Well,
traits as in the original text.
That's
right?
not honest.
I think that the rhyme as it's as such is for Arabic. It's much less a marker than it is in German or perhaps in Dutch, and
Danish.
even in Danish. I don't, and in Dutch, but I don't know. Perhaps it's the same. It's the case in Dutch. When I put a rhyme in the end of rhyming prose, in German it is much more effective than it is in Arabic. In Arabic it comes much more easily. So I have to ponder very thoroughly before I decide to give it in German a rhyme, because the rhyme is stronger in German than it is in Arabic. So you could do it with rhythm, or even the last syllables, or something like that, or with a colometry or something. But a rhime is hard.
You have your line, ein. line. The diminutive, which you use so much. You can always use it for this.
Yeah.
No, it is difficult in Danish too.
Yeah.
And I have explained it, that the elements, the linguistic elements, I have them always in my translation. But there may be some little small items more to make the rhyme come. But I think it is, in a way, it tells something with those rhymes. And we changes from action, usually into description or something else.
Yeah, that's right.
You used, for all your 1,351 words, you used the original Arab meters.
Yeah, sure. But this is rhyme prose. And there's no meters.
So Ellen did what no translator into English has yet done, which is to translate
and survived,
which is to actually translate the rhyming prose, which Burton, of course, claimed to. It's already happening organically, but I think this is a good moment to invite questions from the audience for the translators here on stage.
A quick question,
Please.
in a way, to that, because I wonder. I guess the arbiter is the audience and the readership. If rhymed prose flows, then that's okay. And I know that translators are wary of it. Hadawi warns against it almost in his introduction.
Exactly.
And I see that he may have a point. So the problem is simply to see with the readers. I mean, I don't know if you have any reactions from readers on rhymed prose. Is it funny? Is it effective? Is it strange? Is it wonderful? From Danish readers.
It's usually funny.
Funny, yes. I'm a little bit afraid of that.
Yes.
Particular
You have
reaction.
this description of the Ifrits.
Yeah.
You know, with eyes like lamps and all that. It's funny. And the text wants it to be funny. And then sometimes there's a beautiful lady. And well, she eyes and roses and so on. And then it becomes a little bit erotic. Well, that is funny too, in the end.
Yes.
And then there are some descriptions of the landscape, and they are beautiful.
Yeah.
So it intensifies the...
Yeah, I think so.
Can I invite people to join the conversation and ask questions? Yes, please.
You're talking about readers. When you are translating, do you read out your translation out loud? Or just
Yes,
see
I
what it
do.
works?
Of course I do. And I'm going to read to you now. And it is, therefore, no, it's not this. Yes, it is. It's a small piece of satire, rhyme prose. If I can find it, I suppose I can. And it is a description of the Ifrits. Yes. You know the story. It's a fisherman who is so lucky to catch a net full of what he thinks is fish. It is a dead donkey, a stinky old dead donkey. And he does that 3 times, and then he gets a jug, opens it, and out comes something very ugly. Yeah. Ja. Nu kommer det. Røgen begyndte nu at samle sig og fortættes. Så rystede den sig og blev til en kæmpemæssig ifrit. Med fødderne på den flade jord og hovedet oppe, hvor skyerne bor. Hans hoved var som en brønd med låg, hver hjørnetand som en mægtig krog. Han havde en mund som en klippehule, og tænder som kampesten, skæve og gule. Næsebor som de rene trompeter, og øreskjold som læderskjold i diameter. En hals så lang som en landevej, og øjne som lygter, Gud hjælpe mig. For at gøre beskrivelsen kort, et hæsligt bæst af den værste sort. Rimene er parvise. Rytmen er der.
Try
På
and
dansk er det dødsjov. Ja. Men det er selvfølgelig heller ikke en beskrivelse af en smuk ung dame.
Did you want to ask?
Yeah, I was wondering. You translated the Quran as well. Did you?
No, I dare not do it.
You dare not do it.
I had to be so very, very precise.
All right.
There's no need here. This one will not get me a fast one.
Yes, Uli, please.
I think the only publisher here is our Danish publisher, right? So this is a question to you. Well, you took the risk to publish the 1001 Nights. Would you also be taking the risk to publish more of, well, Middle Arabic heritage literature?
That's the question.
Such as, well, Claudia translated the 101 Nights to German. Would you do that? Or would you do the Tales of the Marvelous or anything like that?
Well, Ellen and I tried to raise money for Kitab al-Akhani.
Wow.
In vain, in vain.
We almost succeeded.
Almost, yes.
And to translate the whole Kitab al-Aghan. Wow.
No, but
You aim very high. That's very interesting.
So your strategy would be to raise funds first, and once you have the funds, you would take the editorial risk.
There's no other way. Kitab al-Akhani may have 5 readers in Danish.
Robert, do you have something to add to that in terms of it?
I wish we all had publishers like
No.
that. Wonderful.
So the Tales of the Marvelous and the Strange hasn't opened the market for other compilations or other story collections?
Yes, in a way. The editor of Penguin Classics asked me what else should be done, and suggested I very much wanted to get a translation of 1001 Days. I think from the French into Penguin Classics. I don't think I've succeeded there, but I did manage to land a anthology of pre-Islamic poetry that is going ahead quite definitely. So.
But what I would like to reply to Ulrich is that I think as we all know, Ulrich himself did some very, very good translations of some other works of classical Arabic literature in the same series as the 1001 Nights, even before the 1001 Nights was even planned. And this series is called Neue Orientalische Bibliothek, and I think it's the aim of this series to make the Arabic literature or Oriental literature in general known to a more broader public. And I wonder, I think it sold well, didn't it? So even the Nafsawi. Or not?
This, I mean, I was going to mention that when Richard was speaking about erotic literature. I mean, frankly, I wanted to see how that sells. It's a short book. It's not that difficult to translate. It's easy. The English translation sells at an enormous price of something like £120 for 80 pages. It's absolutely ridiculous. But they are making money out of erotic literature. Now, I mean, I never counted I would get that much, but it was fun doing the volume, and you could use an quote unquote authentic Arabic text. It does not sell. Had it pictures? Would it have pictures? Okay, but that's a totally different kind of thing. The Nafsawi does not sell at all. It's very, very few numbers, and of course also the volume of Marvelous Tales that I did some, God knows, 15 years ago, which actually sort of opened up the market for a new translation of the Arabian Nights. That does not really sell very well. So, I mean, in addition to producing interesting pieces of literature, I also, well, I'm quite aware of the fact that the literature needs a specific kind of marketing. I'm not good at all in marketing.
Robert raised his hand to chime in here.
Well, yes, it does need marketing. Tales of the Marvelous was taken on by Penguin, and they were very skilled marketeers, and they timed the publication of the book for November, for the Christmas book sale, early November, and they packaged it with a rather luxurious binding. They really spent a lot on that, like that. And yes, it sold sensationally well and got almost reviewed in almost every possible place it could be reviewed, even 14 times.
I'm just curious, why will the 1001 Days not happen?
I don't know. I'll press them again. It seems to be an obvious thing to do. I think perhaps the feeling is with the Arabian Nights and with the Tales of Marvelous, they've got enough of that kind of thing at the moment, and we have to wait a few years.
And of course, if we start translating from French, then we're getting away from the mandate of, of actually being more inclusive of works of Arabic literature. Sorry, there was another question. I saw a hand, or maybe I imagined. Please.
It's true the general public thinks of the Arabian Nights as a collection of fairy tales for children. But the paradox is there is almost no literature about the Arabian Nights for children. There's one good chapter in Caracciolla's book on the Arabian Nights in English literature. But apart from that, there's not. And yet the versions provided by Andrew Lang, Lawrence Houseman, Randolph Clough Ellis, Geraldine McCaughrean, are works of literature in their own right, and in a sense they're kind of translations. They're translations from adult English into infantile English, and it seems strange we've not been looking at that.
Yeah, and there's an interesting point to that, Robert. I don't know whether you noticed until sort of, I think about 2 years ago, Amazon actually had on their website an announcement for a book by an author whose name I forgot. I appear to remember something like David Walks or whatever. And he announced a book, Arabian Nights in Children's Literature.
I think it's Robert Mack.
Yes. Mack. Oh yes, maybe. But since 2 years, the announcement has disappeared. He's not doing the book.
Yes.
Which
So
is
it's like
sad.
the catalogue had it in their catalogue as if it was something that was coming into the library imminently, but that was about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. He decided he would not write the book for whatever reason.
There was once a research project at the University of Oldenburg. I think they then brought out a quite informative catalog. I'm sure you have it. It's called Sesam öffne dich, about 1001 Nacht als Kinder- und Jugendliteratur. And it was like a Begleitband to a big exhibition. And I think it sort of combines all kinds of articles on this subject, but this is the only one I know in German, at least. Yeah.
Well, if there are no more questions, Jan had asked me to keep this until 5 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, given that we have subsequent events coming. So I'd like to thank the translators for generously showing up, and in particular that wonderful, lovely reading of the cadence of the rhyming Sage in Danish. So thank you.